I got burned on one deal in my career that I didn't really talk about, but my short career of real estate investing got burned once. And it was trusted the operator, didn't look at the property myself, didn't actually show up, didn't touch it. Ended up being a bad deal. But ever since that moment, I said, from here on out, I am staying at the place. I'm touching this place. I'm doing the due diligence, and I'm never going to invest in something I don't see myself.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Alex Schloe, and I am so glad that you are spending the time listening to another episode. So thank you for that. Today's episode was awesome. In this episode, we talk about an asset class that we haven't talked about before on the show, and that is extended stay hotels. And I tell you what, this might be my next shiny object. We'll see. But today's guest was incredible. His name is Dr. Kyle Stephenson, and he is a sports medicine orthopedic surgeon in Indianapolis, Indiana, and he is an amazing guy. We talk about how real estate is the most powerful tool to truly build wealth for physicians and for others. But we focus on physicians on this podcast. We also talk about many classes of real estate. He has a whole breadth of experience from BRRRR investing, short-term rental investing, 176 unit multifamily syndication deal, and now the extended stay hotels. It was a really cool podcast episode. We did a great deal deep dive towards the end, so you're going to want to stay tuned. Without further ado, let's get started with today's episode with Dr. Kyle Stephenson. Dr. Kyle Stephenson, welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, man. So happy to have you on the show. How are things going?
Good. Thank you for having me, Alex. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So glad that we got to connect and looking forward to sharing your story with folks today. Thanks for staying up late in Indianapolis to record this. I appreciate it.
No problem. It's the perfect time. We got 3 kiddos down to bed, and there's going to be no loud noises in the background, so we should be good.
Yeah, hopefully the same here. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, thanks again. And do you mind telling folks a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kyle Stephenson, sports medicine orthopedic surgeon in Indianapolis, Indiana. I was born and raised here, did my training. I went to medical school down at Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine down in Bradenton, Florida. I did my orthopedic training up at Michigan State, where I met my wife. Always a good story. Her dad was one of my attendings. So I could either go really good or really bad, and we got married. So all was good. And then I did a sports medicine fellowship out in Boston with the Boston Celtics, Harvard, and Merrimack University. And then my wife and I came back to Indianapolis, my hometown. I practiced there for 4 years. And that was, around COVID time. We had our first son. It was one of those where we decided, I loved Florida when I was going to medical school down there. So we were like, let's go back to the beach. It's COVID time. Things were weird. One of those where we had our son. We're like, if he starts school and we don't leave, we'll never do it, right? So no regrets. We moved to Charleston, South Carolina, practiced there for a couple years. And that's really where I found real estate. It was kind of that transition from my first job to my second in Charleston. And then fast forward, we had our daughter in Charleston, South Carolina. Family wasn't close by, right? So people were flying in town, had our third son on the way. We were like, all right, now we need to get back to home with family. So now we're back to Indianapolis. We're home. We feel good doing real estate investing. Started that in 2020, 2021. And then it's just been, grind ever since. And honestly, it's been the best thing ever. So we'll get more into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, we got to hear the story about how you met your wife, who is the daughter of your attending. And I'm glad that worked out for you.
Yes. Yeah, so I'll just tell quickly. I was a second-year resident at Michigan State. Her dad, one of our attendings, he was very well-loved with the residents. I didn't really know him all that well because I was a 2, right? When you're a 2, especially in ortho, you pretty much get dumped on. You take all the call, and nobody really knows who you are. I went to the Michigan State football game. I've probably had a couple of drinks. One of those where not drunk, but like kind of feeling good, And we all, as residents, hung out there at his house he was having a Mayweather fight. And just, chatting, saw my future wife, spent a lot of time in the kitchen hanging out with her and her twin sister and her mom. And, one of those where I was like, I should ask her out, but this is like the dumbest thing ever. So, ended up doing it a week or 2 later, and I had a couple coffee dates. Nothing major, but I was on call with her dad one night, and I said, I have 3 things for you, Dr. Flood. So if number 1 of your patients is in the ER and, this, that, and the other, he's an orthopedic spine surgeon. Number 2, there was a patient up on the floor and they had one issue, and, we took care of it. And I was like, all right, that's it. And he's like, wait, what was that third thing? I was like, oh yeah, I've been on a couple of dates with your daughter, so I just wanted to get your permission. Is this okay? He's like, as long as she's happy, I'm happy. So all worked out.
Oof, man, good thing. Yeah. That could have been something, that's for sure. Did you have to do more call after that or less call after you told him?
Yeah, I had to do a lot more call. Yes.
Yeah, rightfully so. That's awesome, man. Well, I'm glad it worked out.
The cherry on top was my brothers were my three best men for the wedding, and they did a little skit. They called me the golden child, and they said, you're a golden child when, told a story. And so at the very end, my father-in-law stands up, grabs the mic. He said, you're the golden child when your boss lets you marry his daughter. Mic drop. I was like,
that's awesome.
We made the right move.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like an awesome family to be married into too, which is awesome, man. That's cool. Well, yeah, sounds like a good bit of moving, man, from Indianapolis to Florida to Michigan to South Carolina. I would have thought you were in the military or something hearing that, but that's awesome to get to experience a bunch of different places. We love Charleston. We did like a little baby moon not a baby moon. It could have turned into that. We did a little honeymoon after our wedding there, and it was a great time, man. The food was incredible and awesome place. My wife loved it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Place. And then, of course, we lived in Florida at the time. We were driving down from our wedding to Florida, where I was stationed at Eglin. So spent some time there at the beach in Destin and now in the mountains of Colorado. So I feel you on all the moves. We're trying to figure out what's next for us here coming up this summer. So
absolutely. That's great. Yeah, man. You want to have no regrets, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, and we're in that sweet spot too. We're like, Jack, my oldest, he's 4. He's not in school yet, and then our 4-month-old Owen. So we're like, man, we really kind of have about a year before we really need to settle down and like get Jack school and those sorts of things. So we'll see. I don't know what'll happen next, but it's exciting, man. And it's cool too that like real estate is offered and investments and business has offered the opportunity for us to like really live wherever we want if we want to. I still need to work, but you can work I can work part-time if I want to, or take some time off. And so really grateful for that opportunity, which was all real estate, man. So, well, that's really cool. Are you still practicing full time at this point?
Yes. Yep. Good question. So practicing full time. Yep. Hospital employed. So W-2, but I couldn't be happier with the schedule. Honestly, it's my third job in 6 or 7 years, which sounds bad. We feel home, and honestly, it's the best job of the 3 so far. Like I feel it's one of those where you know what you want at this point. Like I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew the schedule that I wanted. I knew, how close I wanted to be from the hospital, and I'm only 7 minutes away. I only take call once every 5 days, once every 5 weekends, which is the best I've had so far. Really, it's set up perfectly for me to, have this time with my family. I get to come home for lunch. Like you can't really beat that, right? When your kids are young, it gives me time to work on real estate as much as I want, really, which is kind of nice. And then I get to take care of my patients without pressure of, seeing 60 patients in a day. My PA and I are seeing a fair amount of patients, but I squeeze them in and the times that I want to, essentially, and so that I can work on real estate and see my kiddos the rest of the time.
That's awesome, man. What a cool balance. I know a lot of folks don't really have that flexibility, and I'm glad that you found that. That's really cool. How did you get involved in real estate or interested in real estate?
Yeah, good question. During residency, and you're probably the same way, like I was reading Rich Dad Poor Dad quite a bit, the Purple Bible, if you will. Big fan of Robert Kiyosaki. I read, Jim Dolly book, White Coat Investor. But Robert Kiyosaki really spoke to me. And, it was one of those where like you dream big when you're in residency. You're like, yeah, I want this, 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 and this. But I don't know how long it's like, am I ever really going to get that? It's basically unattainable at that time. But just reading that, Cash Flow Quadrant, another one, and just kept going and never really took the plunge. And honestly, in my first job, I was like, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I make good money. Life is good, right? But I always felt like there was something more. And my wife can, probably pinpoint it better than me, but I just felt almost stuck. And it was like only in the first few years of practice, which is weird because I was making good money. I was investing in the stock market. We lived on a lake. We had all the things we really wanted, but I just felt like there was something more. And so I was doing some limited partner deals, and that was fine. It was just investments, but they were kind of boring. I was like, it's cool that I own that apartment complex over there or that building, but I'm not seeing, I'm seeing distributions quarterly, but it's just kind of boring. Like it wasn't much. And then I think COVID really stimulated a lot. I kind of saw, what was going on. First of all, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. So they said, you're not really useful in the hospital, right? Like everybody else, they kind of shifted, outpatient, your family medicine. They said, hey, you guys can go, use your medical brains, go to the hospital, help out. Orthopedic surgeons, you stay home and lift weights. So I was home and I was doing a ton of research, and I dove deep into COVID and, just all the mandates, this, that, and the other. And I was getting irritated, and I was like, man, what can I control? And the only thing I can control is how much money I give to the government, who I wasn't really trusting at the time. So that's when I was calling my CPA left and right, like, hey man, what can I do to minimize my taxes? He's like, you make too much money. There's not much you can do. And your W-2, even worse. So I was like, well, there's gotta be something. So then I just started listening to more, semi-retired MD, just diving deep into podcasts, reading books. books left and right, trying to figure this out. And yeah, I mean, it dawned on me that real estate is the way to go. And you got to be active in real estate. You know, it can't just be a passive. It's, you know, there's limitations to it. So yeah, that really pushed me hard to get into real estate. And I would tell you that the last book that really pushed me over the edge, and I had Dr. Burns on my podcast, Why Doctors Don't Get Rich. Awesome book. He talks about the stories with Robert Kiyosaki, they're good friends. He read his first book. And that's when I was like, all right, light bulb went off, buy my first property, let's just go.
That's awesome. Yeah. Dr. Burns, he was the first guest on this podcast. He was actually the reason I started this podcast. I was kind of toying with the idea of starting the podcast, and I heard him on my buddy Ryan Lubin's podcast called Action Academy. And I told my wife, I was like, look, if I can get Tom Burns to be the first guest for a podcast, I'll start it. And I emailed him and I didn't hear back for a while, which I was like, sweet, I'm off the hook, you know? And then probably 2 or 3 more weeks went by and I got an email from him and he was like, I'd love to be the first guest. Sorry. I was like backpacking through Panama for the last 6 weeks or something like that. And I'm like, that is awesome. So yeah, I read his book. Yeah, Why Doctors Don't Get Rich. Great book, should be mandatory reading for everyone in residency. And just really cool, super inspirational, especially, you know, I'm sure for you too, as an orthopedic surgeon, and Dr. Burns being an orthopedic surgeon, it's probably really cool to see someone who like figured it out from like, hey, I can still practice medicine how I want to. And I am able to do that because I have this freedom from my investments. And so it was probably really cool for you to see that, you know, in someone who has such knowledge and experience and expertise, which is just awesome.
Yeah. And the biggest thing I took away from that is obviously the freedom, you know, with real estate investing, no question, but not necessarily the freedom that you have to retire or you're just going to give this up. I'm actually happier going into the office to see my patients because I don't feel the pressure that this is my only income. You know, that if I don't see 30 patients today, then, you know, I'm not getting a paycheck. So I actually come in there happier, more excited to see these patients and give them better care, honestly.
Yeah, I think that financial freedom, which it can be just some degree of financial freedom. I think some people think like they have to quit completely, you know, and make so much money that they can replace their W-2. But I think financial freedom is just a spectrum. And maybe that does look like, hey, I have enough passive income coming in that I can see 5 less patients per day and still even out. And then you're able to spread that time out to see more patients or spend more time with your patients or practice medicine how you want to. And so I think that flexibility is key and the protective aspect of it too. Like, you know, COVID may happen again and you may not get paid to go lift weights. And then you have that income coming in. And so, yeah, it's just an awesome way to do it. But that's really cool to hear how you got started in your journey. Those books that you mentioned were fantastic. Those podcasts that you mentioned were fantastic. So folks definitely go back and, you know, look into Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Why Doctors Don't Get Rich and Jim Dolly's books, The White Coat Investor and Semi-Retired MD, like just great folks. And we were talking about this before the podcast. It's so cool to see doctors just doing big things outside of the operating room or outside of clinic. And it makes such a huge impact. I mean, like, look at you and I both, you know, Tom Burns has been really influential for us in what we've been able to do. And there's been so many other doctors' lives that have been changed, both in the clinic or in the operating room, but also at home, man. Like I'm a way better father because, you know, or at least I think and try to be because I have more time with them or I will have more time with them after the Air Force. And yeah, it's just a perspective change, man. And I think it's hard. I think we get wrapped up in the white coat and like, hey, that's our identity. We worked so hard to be a doc, like we can't do anything else. And it's just not the case. So anyways, man, really cool.
I mean, honestly, patients tend to like talking about that too. I would agree. I don't know if your patients, you know, listen to your podcast at all or know that you have a podcast. Mine will look me up and they'll see podcasts and they're like, I'm intrigued by this. You know, let's hear more about it. So it's not like it turns patients off like, oh, you need to focus on just me. You know, they're okay with us thinking outside the box and getting creative and, you know, and doing those things.
It's led to some really cool conversations because I, of course, take care of active duty members too, independents, but I've had some active duty, like young active duty members, like 20, 21 years old. And they're like, hey man, I was listening to your podcast and like, I really want to get started in real estate and I'll be able to point them in the right direction. I'm like, this is great that there's like a 20-year-old who is in the Air Force who's thinking about investing in real estate, not going to buy like another motorcycle or whatever else. And so it's been really cool. It is funny sometimes though, when they come in, they're like, oh, I heard you just bought a new assisted living, you know, home or whatever. Like, man, I guess like really it is all out there when you have a podcast, but it's definitely been a positive and led to some really cool conversations and opportunities.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So got interested in real estate. What was next for you? Did you know what asset class you wanted to be in, or how did you figure out that piece of the puzzle?
I really didn't. And so when I first was thinking about this, we were living in Charleston. We just moved from Indy. Charleston was expensive. I mean, this is post-COVID. You know, people were flocking down to Florida, the Carolinas. So it was crazy expensive. So, you know, I was doing underwriting. I was, you know, all the calculations, like nothing was panning out. I was like, okay, well, this is frustrating. And the light bulb went off one night. Indianapolis is one of the best cities to invest from investors all over the country, right? I'm like, that's my backyard. You know, I know that place inside and out. So my first investment was just a BRRRR, put $75K down, $40K renovations. Didn't know what I was doing, but I had some buddies who are firemen who like, yeah, we can renovate this place. And, at first they were like, oh, we need to do this, and this. I was like, guys, this is an investment property. This is not, I'm not living there. Nobody I know is going to be living there. Let's make it nice enough. We took out the mold. We did the right things. But anyway, so yeah, I had basically 120K into it, and then did my first refinance, pulled all my money out. And so basically I had no money in the deal, which was fantastic. It was a true BRRRR. Like got a tenant in after the rehab, refinanced, got my money out of there. And, the guy's still in there today and, make a few $100 a month and there's no money in the deal. So I was able to move to the next one. I was like, man, if I just keep stacking this up, this will be fantastic, And we did. The next one was a short-term rental actually down in Charleston. It was turnkey, but good lesson learned. I learned a ton from it, made good money out of it, still have it, but I turned it into a midterm rental. The biggest thing on that is I did the whole short-term rental tax loophole. So I was learning, a lot about the stuff, and I did the tax loophole, which benefited me greatly. I did my 100 hours and more than everybody else. And yeah, that was a good learning lesson. So did that, now I got 2 down. I'm like, okay, we're making some strides here. Picked up a couple more. And then finally I was just like, man, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. Like if I do this is not building wealth quick enough. So I really started networking at that point. No more just reading on my own, listening to podcasts on my own. I'm like, now I really need to get out there, start networking. And that's when I started finding bigger deals, syndications. So did a syndication, 176 unit down in Savannah, Georgia. It was great. Learned a lot as a GP. But it was just a big deal. And you basically become a teammate, which is awesome. It was good, but it was one of those where it was almost too big of a deal. And I kind of gathered, and we're still in it. And, we still help out with asset management and still part of the team. But I realized that I liked smaller stuff. I want to be a little bit more hands-on. And so I actually connected with a guy that was doing extended stay hotels. He had some in Vegas. And during COVID, his extended stay hotel was 100% occupied. The strip in Vegas went down to 7% occupied. And he's like, we got some going here. People need to live. And when you think about the market, multifamily has obviously slowed down, of course, because there was nowhere else for it to go after, from 2010 basically to 2020, it was going crazy. But, him and I had plenty of discussions and it was like, hey man, mortgage is up, rents are up. People need a place to live, and these affordable housing or extended stays are a great place for people to live, potentially. So anyway, he had his in Vegas. He had 2 fairly small ones. He was looking in Louisiana because there were some owners of hotels that were offloading them for pretty cheap. They became absentee owners. So we bought 2. We have 3 in the pipeline, but basically renovated 2 essentially red roof inns, if you will, exterior corridor hotels, like nothing special, right off the interstate, and turned them into what we call affordable luxury hotels. We created a brand called Boardwalk Suites Hotels, Boardwalk Suites Affordable Luxury Hotels. And it's been great. Really cool experience. Looks really nice. You can get online, boardwalksuites.com, and check out the renovations of what we did. But it's fascinating. It's just really neat. So that's been really what we're focused on right now is sticking with that. So we'll see. It's a different asset class than, what most people are doing with multifamily or self-storage. But yeah, so far so good. It's been lucrative.
That's awesome, Kyle. Yeah, I want to talk more about the extended stay hotels, but I wanted to just hit a few points here real quick on your journey, which is awesome, man. For folks who don't know what BRRRR investing is, do you mind explaining that to them, what a BRRRR looks like?
Yeah, so I believe in Bigger Pockets, I think it was David Green that actually coined the term. But yeah, so maybe Brandon Turner. Did Turner coin the term and then David Green wrote a book about it?
Yeah, I think so.
That might be how it went.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, BRRRR. So buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So B and 4 R's, BRRRR. And basically, that's essentially what a lot of these multifamily or any value add that you hear about, that's essentially what the investors are doing. So you buy a place for, reasonable price, you rehab it, rent it out because the banks won't let you finance until it's rented. And a lot of banks will, give you 6 months, maybe a year. Luckily, my lender, he's a buddy. We have a mortgage through him, surgery centers, like all these different things. So he basically said, you put a renter in, we'll refinance for you. And so it was great. Yeah, we basically put a renter in, and a month later we're refinancing, pulling our money out of the deal. I'm like, man, this is actually, this is gold, really, right? It's like a free house the mortgage is being paid for, and you're getting a couple $100, on top of that. So,
man, yeah, it's a great way to scale too. A great way to get started. Also a great way to scale because you can just, like you mentioned, take that capital from the refinance and then invest that in more deals, and just that snowball keeps growing as you're going, which is really awesome. And then you took that, into the short-term rental and were able to utilize the tax loophole. And for folks who don't know about that, Amanda Hahn was on the podcast quite some time ago, and she was talking about the short-term rental tax loophole. And it's an incredible way to offset your active income through real estate. Kyle, do you have anything else to say in regards to that or how that worked for you?
First of all, I want to say you've had all the big dogs on, man.
Thanks, man.
This is great. Amanda Hahn.
Yeah.
Dr. Burns. Yeah. You've had a lot of good ones on. Yeah, I think the short-term rental tax loophole between that and rep status or real estate professional status, I would say, that's the low-hanging fruit, probably the easiest way to get the tax benefit. And that's what I tell people. Real estate professional status it's tough to get. Basically, your spouse, like as a physician, you're not going to get it unless your spouse doesn't work. So yeah, I think the short-term rental tax loophole is a great way to go. Great tax benefit, of course. Make sure it's in a good area that they're not going to change the laws on you, that, you can't do short-term rentals, anymore. But yeah, I loved it. I thought it was a great opportunity. And, basically you'll hit the two quick ways to do it, or not two quick ways, but short-term rental tax loophole. The rules are the tenants have to be in 7 days or less on average. And then you have to material participate. So what I did is the 100 hours and more than everybody else. So basically more than the cleaner, more than the handyman, more than the contractor. And it really wasn't that hard to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you're able to take that depreciation and take those losses against your active income, which is really cool. Not something you can typically do with just like long-term real estate investments. So yeah, it's a really awesome opportunity. Well, the syndication, that sounds like a fun experience. I agree. That would probably be kind of tough to go from, residential home to 176 units. That would be pretty difficult, but definitely a good learning opportunity. I've been lucky to be GP on a couple syndications, and it's just really cool to see that team come together. And you just like building a sports team, man. You just need the right people. You got to have the quarterback and you got to have the running back and everything else to make that team run and be successful. And I think for folks that are listening are like, maybe I don't have the ability or the time to renovate a property, but I can raise a lot of capital. Well, there's plenty of syndications who are looking for capital. And so maybe that's the piece that you add to the team is, hey, I can help bring you $1 million or whatever that may be towards the deal. So that can be really helpful. In regards to extended stay hotels, so yeah, definitely want to hit on this really cool asset class. It sounds like, came across somebody who's doing this in Vegas. What do you like about extended stay hotels?
Yep. So first of all, there's no question the rents have gone up. There's no question the mortgage rates have gone up. There is a certain demographic or population that needs a place to stay. And so, if you think about an extended stay hotel, you kind of think of a place that's like, maybe bug infested or maybe some prostitutes or drugs or, you just don't have a positive connotation necessarily. We definitely wanted to change that. And so that's what we've done. We wanted to be a place where somebody could live for a long period of time. When he was in Vegas, his average stay was 30 days. So I would compare it more to like a midterm rental. If you're going to compare it to like a single family home, you have your resort hotels would be like an Airbnb. Your multifamily is like a long-term rental. So these extended stays are more like a midterm rental. And I love it. I think it's the sweet spot. So the demographics that we focus on are contractors. So we're down in Louisiana. You think about gas and oil, ton of that. You also think about the storms that have been going on. So, a ton of contractors that go down and need to stay, need a place to stay for months at a time. Travel nurses, still a big thing. Not as big maybe as COVID, but still a big thing. So basically what we did, we created a brand. It's called Boardwalk Suites. And these are the first hotel of the brand. We have 3 in the pipeline right now that we're about to take down. But basically, so Jason, my partner, lived in Vegas, got liquidated furniture from the Vegas hotels, the Mirage, Mandalay Bay, some of the most beautiful furniture you could imagine, right? That's in these hotels. And if you look at pictures, you'll see, it looks like a high-end hotel. So flip the place, turn it into a nice, what we call affordable luxury. We underwrote it for prices that are more extended stay. So, $40 a night, people could stay, as long as they want. They're not paying, exorbitant amount of money, but they'll stay for a longer time. They'll continue to stay in there because it's so nice and it's comfortable. And then when you think about like tax depreciation, so if you compare it to multifamily is you're depreciating, especially when you're talking about bonus depreciation, you do a cost segregation. You really don't have any furniture that you're doing a cost segregation that you're adding into that accelerated depreciation. When it comes to hotels, you have all that furniture. So that adds up when it comes to the bonus depreciation. So that also helps in that regard.
Yeah, I was just going to make a point to that. Yeah, the capital I helped raise for a GP. First syndication I was involved in was for a boutique hotel in the Smoky Mountains. And yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe that you could accelerate the depreciation on all the beds and all the coffee tables and all the dressers and all the chairs. Like, it was crazy how much more of a tax benefit you got with a hotel, especially when you're doing a big renovation like that. So it's really cool. And it's cool to hear for you, like you guys are solving a huge need, affordable housing for folks who really need that midterm stay and who are probably going to keep coming down there working on the gas pipelines and so forth and oil there in Louisiana. And so it's really cool to hear that. Well, I guess a couple questions I have. One would be like, how did you guys find the deal, purchase the deal? What did that look like? If you don't mind, kind of like a little bit of a deal deep dive. And then the other question would be, how do your tenants pay you typically? Is that through the company that they're working for, or are they paying out of pocket?
So we found the deal through a commercial broker that my business partners had for a while. And so why Louisiana? These were deals that they were right off I-10. I mean, he looked all over the country. And he actually has since moved from Vegas to these hotels just to operate. But yeah, right off I-10. And so we have seller financing and cash with investors. So we did syndicate. But the nice thing is, I mean, so Baton Rouge was the first one, 109 units for $2.3 million.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had seller financing and then the rest of it was cash. And that was actually, the first one was just a JV deal with a couple different partners. So that was a little bit easier. The next one was in Lafayette, Louisiana, 120 units. It came with 8,000 square foot retail space and 40 unit apartment complex in the same parking lot. Pretty good size. Right there off I-10, which goes from basically Florida to Texas, Houston, Texas. So it's busy. And yeah, so similar thing. Seller financing. It was an absentee owner. I mean, he lived there, but he was not managing the place well. One of those where we could take over, renovate it, and turn it into something special. So seller financing. This one, we did bring in some more investors and just getting the place renovated. It's completed. And, we have tenants in there now. And so the biggest thing now is we're going to refinance here in the next couple of years. So, it was a 5-year play. We said at year 2 or 3 that we would refinance with a bank and pull our money out. I mean, truth be told, we underwrote this thing as, we bought it for 2.3, 2.4, especially the Lafayette with the retail space and the 40 unit apartments with it. This essentially could be $11, $12 million deal. So
wow,
a lot of upside. Yep. But we got to play it right. You got to be smart about it and you got to make the right moves. And so far so good.
That's awesome, man. Well, congratulations on that. I'm excited to see how that turns out for you. For the renovations, Kyle, how big was the renovations for these?
Essentially, we bought these things for about $15,000 a unit and put another $15,000 in. So, I mean, all in $35K per unit, which if you compare that to multifamily nowadays, I mean, you're talking $115,000+ per unit. So not terribly extensive. we're not going to buy something that's burned down or, that's got a ton of damage. We want to make sure that it's mostly aesthetics, that we can fix and make functional. One thing we don't have is kitchen. We have a refrigerator and a microwave. No real kitchenettes to cook something on the stove, just because there's a lot of downside with that. There could be, a lot of risk, a lot of liability, and not a lot of upside. A lot of the tenants, they, crazy enough, go grab food from the convenience store, go grab food from, restaurants, things like that. And so it's not even necessary.
Yeah, I remember, doing some training in the Air Force and just cooking everything in a microwave, or going and buying a rotisserie chicken and making the most of it. So yeah, I feel them there. So yeah, you can completely get by for long periods of time with just a microwave and a fridge. Mm-hmm. That's awesome, man.
If you're a contractor, I mean, they work hard all day, right? They want to come home and have a beer and, pop something in the microwave and hang out, prop it up and watch TV.
Absolutely. Yeah. Eat the hungry man, if those still exist. Yeah. That's good stuff, man.
Hot Pockets.
Yep. That's awesome. Very cool. How have you guys been finding tenants or guests, I guess would be a better term? How are you guys finding guests for the hotel?
So a few things: word of mouth, Facebook Marketplace, Airbnb, VRBO. We are on those. Travel nurses have been a furnished finder for the travel nurses. And then the other thing is B2B. So a lot of, business to business model has been great. You go to extended stay, it's kind of like a midterm rental, if you will. Like I said, if you have a midterm rental, drive by an extended stay, see what trucks are in the parking lot, call that company and say, hey, I got this midterm rental. If you guys, you build those connections. And once you start getting that, that's easy flow into the hotel.
Yeah. Do you typically contract out with those companies or have rooms reserved for them, or is it just kind of as you go?
Yeah, a lot of times as we go, but no, we have been doing contracts with ExxonMobil is one, and then a lot of more local contractors. But yeah, I mean, that's an easy way to do it, right? It's, contract it out, so it's a guarantee.
Yeah, that would be really cool. What are some difficulties that you guys have had with the hotel so far?
The renovations were good, but I think what we did, the mistake that we made, I'll put it this way, the biggest mistake that we made is completely taking everybody out to do the renovations. Whereas we should have done the exterior, done the lobby, done the rooms.
And just kind of batch the rooms as you go.
Yeah. And we kept some people in there, but it was sparse. So while we were renovating, we weren't making much money. Right. And a lesson learned. I mean, we talk about it all the time. We're like, all right, so now we got to figure it out. Now we're making money. Now all is good. And honestly, I mean, we haven't had them very long. So it's not like, it's a major mistake, but this next time around, you can be more efficient, right? You're always going to learn something and take it to the next deal.
Yeah, that's the beauty of real estate too. And, in the future, you're not going to make that quote unquote mistake again. And you're just going to keep learning and growing and being more efficient and making money quicker, which is awesome. What about staffing for an extended stay hotel? Has that been something that's been difficult, or since they're more extended stay in not requiring as frequent cleans, has that been a little bit easier for y'all?
Yeah, you can have less staff, which is nice. So if you compare it to an actual hotel where you have front desk staff 24/7, cleaning staff 24/7. There's always somebody there. At least with these, people are staying for a long period of time. I mean, they essentially treat it like their home when they're there. So if somebody's going to be there for, a couple of months, they treat it like their home. And we have washer and dryer. We have that, they can get access to, so they can do their own laundry. And then we charge if they want more towels or their beds to be washed, something like that. Like we charge a little fee here and there. But yeah, so with that being said, the staff, it's minimal. We have the housekeeping. The employees essentially only work 9 to 5. So yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's definitely limited things. Like if you think about a hotel and all the research that we did, 70% expense ratio, whereas with this, it's down to, 40, 45%. Wow. Economy scale hotel.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Yeah, especially in these times where it is difficult to find good staff. It's nice that that's a little bit more. That's really cool, man. Well, I know you said you got 3 more in the pipeline. Nice. Are those all in Louisiana or are they in other places?
All in Louisiana, actually. Yeah, we're going to get to a point here soon, and we're not there yet, but we're going to have a GM, basically a general manager he'll take over complete operation of the hotels. And so by keeping them within a certain radius, he'll be able to manage all of them. He or she will be able to manage all of them. So basically, if you look down I-10, there's Lake Charles is about an hour west of Lafayette. There's another very nice hotel there. And then a couple more in Lafayette. So Lafayette, Louisiana, I mean, it doesn't, I don't know if you know much about it, but the University of Louisiana Lafayette's there. It's a good size city, and they're doing a big renovation, especially right off I-10. So it's actually nice. And there's some investors, some big name investors actually invest down that way. So yeah, I mean, they're just good, wholesome people that need a place to live, and we loving that we can provide that.
That's awesome. Yeah, what a great way to, invest, but also get that fulfillment. That's something that we love so much about residential assisted living is like, hey, we can make great returns for our investors. It's a great investment, but we're most importantly providing great care to the seniors, and for you, providing great affordable housing, which doesn't really exist. So that's awesome, man. I'm happy to hear that. What's the timeline of, oh, sorry, Kyle, go ahead.
No, I think the word fulfillment, honestly, is one of the biggest things when it comes to a lot of this stuff. I mean, even, my single family home, the very first one, the BRRRR, we put that guy in there and he's been in there for a couple of years now. And just one of the most appreciative tenants that I could ever imagine. And he does not pay on time every month by any means. And I give him grace and we have conversations, and it always turns philosophical. It turns, faith-based. And it's just one of those where I feel appreciative that I can, house this guy, that actually I can provide a home for him, because otherwise I don't think he would have a place to be, And so it is something cool in real estate. We're not just doing it for the tax benefit, I don't think. I think it's bigger than that. We're doing it for a fulfillment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think physicians especially are called to that, and we just want to help in whatever way we can. And it's cool that when you can align those passions and be passionate about medicine and be passionate about real estate and business ventures as well, it's awesome. Yeah, it's such a cool opportunity. That's great, man. What is kind of the timeline for these next 3 in the pipeline for you?
Months. I mean, we basically have them under contract, all 3. So one of the guy that sold us Baton Rouge, he owns one in Lake Charles that we're in contact with him. I mean, nobody else is going to jump on it. So, I think that we're doing something unique down there. And really, I mean, so ultimately what we're trying to do is we're likely going to make Boardwalk Suites a franchise. And that's kind of what we're on the path to do. It's become Louisiana's #1 economy hotel, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, I mean, we've cleaned it up nicely and, we're there. We stay on top of it and give guests, have good experiences with it. And so that's the goal, is you put systems in place, and there's crazy number of independent hotel owners in the country that don't want to be a flag, right? Don't want to be one of the big hotel chains. And so I think that we'll have a big demand for this to be a franchise. And so that's really what we're looking to do.
That's awesome, man. I'm excited for you. If folks want to reach out to you, they want to know more, they want to invest with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me, well, you can email me, Kyle@sharpinvestmentsllc.com. Look on our website, www.boardwalksuites.com. You can see the beautiful hotels that we have there. I think we have enough pictures that you can get a vibe for what we did there. And then you can reach out to me. You can call my cell phone if you want to. I can give you a number, or send me that email. I think that's the easiest way, at Instagram at Dr. Stephenson. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn.
Awesome, man. We'll put those links in the show notes for folks who want to reach out. Yeah, it's awesome to see what you guys are doing. I was looking at your website earlier, and I would stay there for sure and be happy with it. And so it's really cool to see what you guys are doing, and excited to see it continue to grow with Boardwalk Suites. And yeah, man, it's awesome stuff.
So real quick in saying that, I've stayed there multiple times. I got burned on one deal in my career that I didn't really talk about, but my short career of real estate investing, got burned once. And it was trusted the operator, didn't look at the property myself, didn't actually show up, didn't touch it. Ended up being a bad deal. And this was a couple of years ago, just as an LP is all I was doing. But ever since that moment, I said, from here on out, I am staying at the place. I'm touching this place. I'm doing the due diligence, and I'm never going to invest in something I don't see myself. So I've actually stayed at the Boardwalk Suites hotels many times, and it's the most comfortable beds. I mean, the furniture is legit. It came from, Mandalay Bay and the Mirage, Vegas. And so comes with everything but bottle service.
There you go.
Yep.
Hey, maybe one day, you never know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I want to be respectful of your time. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap things up?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would tell people is, continue to work on yourself, continue to, read books. I think that's probably the best way to get ahead of anybody else, especially young physicians, is obviously you're, studying for medicine and, try to be the best doctor you could be, which you should, of course. But most people are watching TV and they're watching, football on Sunday nights and all that. I would say if you can read books, that's how you get ahead of people, self-help books, real estate books, business books, whatever it is, you'll get ahead of a lot of something percent of people.
Yeah, that's great advice. And, the information's out there. And then I think the next step, the hardest step, is probably that action piece, the implementation. And so, yeah, definitely folks, get the information and then reach out to Kyle, reach out to myself, reach out to other docs who are doing it, because we're all happy to help. And we're all just excited to see folks who are excelling in the real estate space. So it's good stuff, man. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Kyle. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Alex, for having me on, man. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, hey, it was all about you, man, and you crushed it. So really appreciate it. So with that, it's been Dr. Kyle Stephenson and Dr. Alex Schloe with another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. Signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.